This is in Slovenian. I will not translate this into English. It's good morning. And I'm first. So creating communities. Creating communities, why this issue? Because we're talking about communities, but on the other hand, there is a very big tendency against creating communities. Theo was discovered, as Gual said, in a context in which communities were still the fabric of society. It was class society in the 1960s and 70s. But now, we have an atomized society, especially in the West. We are experiencing hyper-individualism. And Noam Chomsky, there's a quote from him, he's very clear about that. The conclusion is that this leads to a bigger susceptibility to oppression, because people cannot gather anymore to be engaged against it. And this is the future, but it's also the present. You can imagine these people being sucked into their smartphones like in a horror movie. They have become a community of commodities instead of a community of humans. I had a workshop like 15 years ago with participants from 8 different countries, and I asked them, can you make an image of a family? And people expected there would be great differences between this country and that country. But in fact, everything was like this. Every single family was portrayed like this. And it was from Poland and Spain that we thought there would be big differences, but it wasn't. Everybody was looking into their smartphones. So that's the problem. So how to solve this? Well, now Antonio Gramsci comes in. He was an Italian philosopher 100 years ago, and I believe he influenced Boal, but Boal denies to have ever implemented Gramsci's theories. I will come to that in my book. You have to buy it, but it's not even written. So Gramsci has this theory of hegemony. Hegemony. That means that the cultural domination of a narrative that says that everything that seems to be wrong is actually good, and that people get a false consciousness about what they should do. And this atomizes everyone, because everyone has different interests, instead of getting together into what Gramsci called the historic bloc against capitalism and fascism. And the media are playing a very important role in this, especially in modern times, because we are already part of our smartphones. In modern times, Chantal Mouffe, which is a Belgian theorist, developed her ideas about restoring the historic bloc through radical democracy. And she believes, and she wrote a program how you can achieve hegemony again, uniting all the groups that are trying to fight against oppression and capitalism. But this is made, in modern times, it's made a little bit more difficult than we think, because this is Shoshana Zuboff, who wrote the most important book, I think, of modern times about the surveillance capitalism. It's the fact that we have not only become the smartphones, but we're not only slaves of our smartphones, we have become our smartphones, because our data is the raw material of the modern media industries. It means that, where am I? Sorry. We are bought and sold, and our surplus value, it means our personal data, is extracted by the media companies to make more money. This atomizes everybody, because we are not connected anymore as people. We are just surplus value for the companies. This is how we look. This is not cubism. This is a human being being in parts, in small packages of data. And you can see this everywhere. People are targeted with advertisements to make sure that they consume enough, instead of that their humanity is developed. This is a chart of what students of economics in 18 countries have thought of as the most important problems of our times. This is what we're dealing with. This is what communities need to address. But if we're atomized, we will never address these issues. And inequality is number one. Actually, economics students, it's not political science or social pedagogues. And climate change and corona is, of course, very high as well. So we are facing a situation in which we have two blocks. These blocks do not communicate with each other. So if you have just 50% or maximum 50%, we can never change, we can never tilt the system to one side. Theatre of the oppressed is actually operating in only one part of this dichotomy. We are working in the left field, but we need to reach the people in the right field as well to change the world. This is what happens when Twitter. This is a Twitter diagram of two different hashtags. That one is clearly on the left and one is clearly on the right, and they are not shared amongst each other anymore. So there is no communication, there is no dialogue amongst each other. So people actually do not agree on what is the current problems anymore. So what these economic students have found out is not shared by everyone. So what you get is a blurred image of reality. The real image, as Boal calls it in image theater, is not shared. It's blurred on the edges. And if you don't agree about the real image, how can you get to the ideal image together? You have different ideal images. And so how can theater actually change this? This is not a very good representation of the drawing, but I couldn't find a better one. This is how Boal sees theater. It's two people, a platform, and a passionate conflict. Well, people are very passionate about conflicts at the moment, especially on Twitter, we know, but also in real world. So this is a situation in which oppression is very clear. This is a real image that we can relate to. But it is reversed by, let's say, the other side, and they will say, well, it's us that get oppressed by the woke dictators, and this is how they portray the woke dictators. This is Canadian President. So this is how the two sides view each other. So how can there be a community, a common goal, a common ground? This is mind-boggling. Where am I? So if people say, you need community dialogue, and that is the problem we have with Theatre of the Oppressed, we are only addressing one side of the dialogue. We are not crossing the aisle. So how can we achieve this? People say, well, it's okay to have baby steps. There's one here, but to have baby steps within one part of the left-right dichotomy. That's how we will achieve our goals. Well, the problem is, many people say it's not happening. This is a chart from animal rights people. They say, well, in 30 years of baby steps, we have not come one step further. The situation is still horrible. And if you look at climate change, it's even worse. This is the 84% is still of the energy in the world is still fossil energy. It used to be 86%. 20 years ago. So if we go on like this, we will have a 4-degree advancement of global warming within this century. We'll all be fried. So this is not, baby steps is not the solution. The baby's going up now. But there are positive things. There is sunlight on the horizon, because this is what happened in Latin America. Women of Latin America, especially of Chile and Argentina, with art, with theater, with street theater, with aesthetics of the oppressed, I would call it, achieved a huge victory on abortion rights. So there is, and there was a majority in the parliament, in the courts. So this means there is a possibility, but how can we achieve this everywhere? I think we have to articulate values instead of interests, because interests shift, and interests can be influenced by social media, by building blocks, and values are more universal. Values can tilt the scale. Values like justice, equality, like solidarity, like humanity, they can mobilize people to work together to a better future instead of battling on interests. So, if you have a hegemony, it's the most difficult word in English there is, of values, you can use, adapt, or invent exercises to have values be the core of the exercises. We have experimented that with that in the Netherlands for many, many years, and we have seen this mobilizing effect. So you need to create images in which values play a role, and that's actually the basis of classical Greek theater. It's always about values, and you can develop ethical dilemmas to identify the reasons why people don't act, because there is a reason why people stay passive and be sucked into their smartphones. We have to discover, identify these reasons, and use them in workshops. For example, using Cup in the Head and Rainbow, because and we have to also find out that the obvious is not the obvious. There is underground knowledge. There's things that we don't know, that we don't because people have local knowledge that only exists in a community. So in order to connect to the community, we have to find the basis of this local knowledge. There's a word for the Greek word for this is metis. And an example of this is 20 years ago. I interviewed Doug Patterson, and he said he was candidate of the Green Party, and he said, well, the poor people are best served with solar energy, etc. And so, is that true? Because they will pay more for their energy, and they don't get the subsidies to make their houses energy neutral. And then he didn't have an answer. And Sunita Narayan asked the same question to Leonardo DiCaprio in his film. So how are you going to tell the poor that they have to go solar if they only have money to buy coal? We need a solution that is for everybody. So we need to think community and then act community. So you have to discover what are the priorities, what are dominant values, what are the things that people really care about, and not about interests. And that's how you can use Cup in the Head to discover the reasons, the ethical reasons why people don't act. And you can use aesthetics of the oppressed to have a massive demonstration of what people really want, like what the women in Latin America did. And you have to also battle the trolls and not give them the field to make sure that the dichotomy keeps on going, because if you use values, for them it's much more difficult to fight against their own values. And we need some global coordination. You have to do things simultaneously. So, summary, haha. So we have to shift cultural hegemony to humanize humanity. You need to create an historic block and use values over interests. You have to glean collective interests to identify collective desires. You have to find the individual cups in the head in workshop in one-on-one situation, but also in forum theater. You can have characters who do that. You need healing and reconciliation as well, because the blocks have created a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. And you need to occupy the public spaces also on the internet. And if you don't have global coordination, and that's always been my point, it's all going to be drops in the ocean and baby steps. So, thank you very much. How much time did I use?